Hi there. Welcome to Fiction in Real Life. I'm Jennifer Moore, and I'm joined by Julie Daines and Heather B. Moore. And today we have kind of a continuation from last time. We were talking about more coincidences that happened that are true and how they might fit into a story. Before we start, though, we have a giveaway. Julie, do you want to be Vanna White and show our giveaway?
Yes. So this time we are giving away a limited edition Fiction in Real Life mug. They're super cute and very mug-like. So make sure to leave a comment to win.
So leave a comment on any platform where you're seeing this right now, and we'll enter you to win, and you can sip away.
Yes, I'll demonstrate. Pinkies up because we're fancy.
Nice. Right. So I'll start. I have a little story that's a coincidence. It's kind of a sweet story. This is it was on NPR's This American Life, and it's about this couple named Esther and Paul Gretchen. Gretchen. I'm going to say Gretchen, but I'm sorry, Esther and Paul, if I'm not saying your name right. They'd been dating just this short time when Paul decided he was going to ask Gretchen to be his girlfriend. Sorry, Esther to be his girlfriend. So that day he's thinking about it, and he's kind of thinking about how he's going to talk to her, and he's going to pay for a sandwich, and he sees that the dollar bill that he's going to pay with has the word Esther written on it. And he's like, wow, what a coincidence. You know, when I'm thinking about her and wanting her to be my girlfriend, there that is. So he, folded that dollar and put it away in his pocket. And then he ended up using a different one and paying for it. So when he was talking to her, he had it framed and it just said Esther, and he just said, I was thinking about you and this came up, and he gave it to her like a gift, and she was just speechless, and he's like, what? And she said, just ask me about it later. And then so they go on, they date for a while, they get married, and it comes up again, like maybe they're moving some stuff around and they find this framed dollar bill with her name on it. And he asked her about it, and he was like, you acted really weird when you saw this. Why don't you tell me what you were thinking? And she said that after she had broken up with a guy, she had written her name on a dollar bill. And she said, whoever is the man that brings this back to me, I'm going to marry. And she didn't want to tell him right then because they hadn't been dating very long, and she didn't want to seem crazy. But it was her, her handwriting, and it was the dollar that she had written. And so as soon as he had given it to her, she knew he was the one for her. So that dollar brought Esther and Paul together. Story.
Cute.
So Julie, what do you think? Would you book that?
Oh my gosh. Book it so fast. That is the cutest little story. I mean, really, that really would just be the clincher, the final clincher in any kind of little rom-com or whatever. So cute. And just, I don't know, it kind of reminds me just a tiny bit of Serendipity. Did you guys ever watch that old movie Serendipity with
I think so.
John Cusack and Sarah, what's her name? Oh my gosh. Anyway, it's an adorable movie, and a similar thing happens where she's like, I'm going to write my name on this dollar bill, my name and phone number. And whoever finds it, if you ever find it, then that's the sign that we're supposed to be together. Anyway, it's a really adorable movie. But
all right. What about you, Heather? Would you book it?
Yeah, I think it's fun. It reminded me a tiny bit about my book that comes out in July called Rebecca and Isaac. So that's a biblical story. But part of the biblical story is that a man, and I call him Eliezer. Eliezer is a true person, but we're not sure if he's the actual person that went in search of Rebecca. But he comes to this well, and he's supposed to find a wife for Isaac. And so he's just praying to find one. And then he says to God, if you, the woman that offers me water is the one that I need to make this, propose to. Well, make this proposal to him on behalf of Isaac. And so it just reminded me a little bit about that, where they're asking for a sign or some sort of symbol to be shown to them, or some sort of like full circle moment to happen. So yeah, I love it.
I love it too. I love that kind of, I don't know, just like you said, rom-com. It reminds me, do you remember the Robert Downey Jr. movie with Marissa Tomei where
Oh, yeah.
like the fortune teller told her she was going to marry?
Only You. What's that
Yeah,
called?
Only You. I love that. It kind of reminded me of that and how it came around in a funny way. And that shows.
Stories are so cute when it feels like the relationship is confirmed by destiny.
And I think if she had told him about the dollar right when he gave it to her, maybe they would always wonder, like, did he just, I think they did it just right. So it feels like they really fell in love. And then they had this kind of, like you said, confirmation.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to tell my story. Oh, I just did. That was my story. Sorry. We're super professional. All right. Heather, would you tell your story?
Sure. So my story is about a woman named Violet Jessup. You may recognize her name. So she's pretty well known for having survived multiple shipwrecks. In fact, in 1911, she was on the RMS Olympic when it collided with the British warship HMS Hawke. And the ship didn't sink or anything, but it was definitely damaged. And then she ends up on the Titanic, and we know what happened to the Titanic, and she survives the Titanic. So also as a side note, she was a nurse and an ocean liner stewardess. So she was working on these ships. And the next ship, well, not the next ship, but her next accident was on the HMHS Britannic, and this was only 4 years later in 1916. And this one also sunk, and she was one of the ones that survived. And so kind of a wild story. I did a little bit more research into her, and she was married for about a year, and she continued working in the shipping industry and continued on many more voyages. So just interesting side note. And I personally thought it'd be cool to write a story about her, but there might already be books out there. I haven't looked that up yet, so I wouldn't want to duplicate, but it would be interesting to have a character and follow her life like that.
So you're saying you would book it?
Yeah, I'd book it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And she's so pretty, right? That picture of her, she's gorgeous. Yeah. I think I heard a podcast about her, and they kind of described, each one of the shipwrecks and how she survived and everything. What a cool lady. I would never step foot on a ship again, especially after the Titanic. After floating in that freezing water, be like, oh no, I'm getting a new job. I'm going to be a nurse in the hospital.
A land nurse.
A land nurse. What about you, Julie?
Well, I don't think I would book it, because I think really in order to book it, it would have to be a biography, like a nonfiction almost. Because if you really wrote a story like that, it wouldn't be unbelievable that someone could survive 3 different major shipwrecks, and I don't know, it just seems so unbelievable. I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about, fiction in real life. And so, but I don't know. I feel like people would be like, oh my gosh, if it was a fictional story, they would be like, there's no way.
Yeah. So her nickname was Miss Unsinkable.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
It's like Forrest Gump, right? Just showing up at all the big moments in history. It seems not real.
Yeah. And the courage to keep sailing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, after the first shipwreck, I'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trains.
I mean, even hearing a noise or something, I'd be like, oh my gosh, she probably had trauma.
Yeah.
Poor woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I bad luck? Am I the one?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Your ship I go on sinks.
Hey, Julie, you have a couple.
I just have one little sort of coincidental, interesting piece of historical connection that I don't know why, but to me was kind of just really interesting. So it begins in 1960 in Atlanta, Georgia. And there is this little couple there named Walter and Betty Roberts. And they open up a little theater school for children. And, of course, this is 1960s Atlanta. Nothing is really integrated. Everything is segregated. And there's this family that really wants to put their children in a theatrical school, but no one will accept them. And this is the family of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. And finally, they call the school that Walter and Betty Roberts are operating. And they're like, we're trying to find a little theatrical school that we can enroll our children in. Would you accept them? And they're like, oh, yeah, for sure. Just bring them over. And so through this theatrical school thing, the Roberts and the Kings kind of became, friends. They got to know each other pretty well. But then in 1967, Betty Roberts is pregnant and she goes to the hospital to deliver her baby. And, they do run this little theater school, but it's not like it's raking in the big bucks, right? They don't have a ton of money. But either way, she goes to the hospital and she delivers her baby. And then it turns out, however, that the hospital bill was paid for by the Martin Luther King Jr. and by Coretta Scott King. It was completely paid for. They just paid for the whole thing. And it turns out that the baby that was born that day is the actress Julia Roberts. So I just think that's a cute story. It's something that happened, but Julia Roberts and her family didn't really talk a lot about it. It was like, a year before Martin Luther King was assassinated. And they didn't really talk about it, but then it kind of came out. Someone did some research and it came out in like an interview, and Julia Roberts was like, yep, that is what happened. They came, they enrolled in our school, and then she was born in 1967 and they paid for it. I don't know. I don't know why that tickles my fancy, but
That's so neat.
There's just like all these little things, like Martin Luther King Jr. and his family are bigger than life. And just thinking that he wanted to put his kids in theater school, that he did like regular stuff like that, like making sure. And then thinking that there was a family that they became good friends with. And I don't know, that was a lovely story. Really. And I love that they paid for the hospital bills.
Yeah.
For the theater guy and his wife. And
then the theater daughter grows up to be this great actress. And so, super famous. I don't know. I just thought it was really kind of fun.
I don't know if I would book it, because it's like,
is it even a bookable thing?
Right.
I don't know.
I just want to like it. I just like it. All the things that I like knowing all those details about, because Julia Roberts is bigger than life too, but she had, a regular family who were kind to this family that was, you've seen those pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. and his, he's got his kid outside and he's like cleaning up this cross that was burned on his lawn, and he's trying to kind of keep one of his children away from it. So that's lovely to think that, not everybody was horrible to them.
Yeah.
What a great story. Would you book it, Heather?
I love this story. I just, I think it definitely, I probably wouldn't put it in a book unless I was writing a book about coincidences or something. But as far as like the story, I think it's sweet. And it's kind of cool that it wasn't like something that maybe Julia went around bragging about, but someone kind of had to dig it up. And then she's like, oh yeah, that is what happened. But it wasn't something she was using as like, to bring more attention to herself. So that's neat too.
Yeah, it makes me like all of them even more.
Yeah, me too.
The whole group.
Me too.
What about you, Julie? Would you book it?
Well, so again, I don't think you can book that exact situation, because those are all really famous people, and you can't just, I'm not going to just write a story about Julia Roberts as the main character. But I do think that as we've been having these shows and telling these stories about coincidences, that I feel like it would be fun to put more of that kind of thing in a book. This coincidence, this randomness that turns out to be some kind of fate or destiny or something like that. I don't know. Because it really does happen in kind of really strange and remarkable ways.
Yeah. It's kind of a rule of fiction, though. You just You can't have
You
too
can't
much
make it.
coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah, then people are like, "Oh, well, the author just made that up." Well,
Yeah.
sometimes
The author's just lazy.
stuff
Yeah.
really does happen like that, and so,
Well, those were great
you know,
stories. And that's a feel good one to end
yeah.
on. I love that. Just feel happy knowing that. All right, guys. Remember, we have our giveaway. It's the mug that Julie demonstrated that works. And anyway, write on in and let us know your stories, your coincidences, your hometown scary, weird things that happened in your high school when you were a kid, or in your neighborhood, or your cousin's weird trip, or whatever. Just write it all in. It's at, I have to wait for it to come around, fictionirlauthors@gmail.com. And we love hearing from you. And thanks for joining us today on
Fiction in
Real
Life.